Hi and welcome back to our channel, where we recap your favorite games for you. Today we will be recapping the remake of Resident Evil 3, so without further ado, let's begin. Resident Evil 3 is a survival horror game developed and published by Capcom in 2020. The game is a remake of the 1999 title Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. It features Jill Valentine, a former elite agent, and Carlos Oliveira, a mercenary, who are on a mission to find a vaccine and escape from a city during a viral outbreak. The game is played from a third-person perspective and requires players to solve puzzles and fight monsters while being hunted down by a creature known as Nemesis. A combination of live-action and CGI footage is shown depicting news reports about the viral outbreak in Raccoon City. Meanwhile, Umbrella Corporation scientists can be seen finishing their latest project, which is revealed to be Nemesis. Shortly after the opening credits, the Nemesis is loaded onto a helicopter. Following this, Jill Valentine breaks into a nightmare in which she discovers blood in her sink and begins to transform into a zombie. She becomes terrified and retreats into darkness, only to emerge later and find out that she has physically transformed. Realizing that she has little time left, Jill picks up a handgun and shoots herself in the head before waking up from her nightmare. On September 28th, Jill Valentine falls asleep while investigating the Umbrella Corporation from her apartment. Shortly after, she receives a frantic phone call from Brad Vickers, warning her to leave immediately. Before he can finish his sentence, the call abruptly cuts off, leaving Jill with a sense of dread. As she turns around, the Nemesis bursts through the wall, causing Jill to spring into action. She narrowly escapes its grasp by running into the hallway and then into another apartment before making her way to the fire escape. Descending the fire escape, she witnesses the devastation that has consumed the Raccoon City. Buildings are on fire, debris is scattered everywhere, and the streets are overrun by hordes of zombies. After taking a moment to collect herself, Jill decides to re-enter the apartment building. Unfortunately, her decision leads to her once again being ambushed by the Nemesis. The creature uses its tentacles to grab her, but Jill manages to dodge them and make a break for it. The Nemesis then tries to pin her down using debris from the building, but she narrowly escapes yet again. The tension is palpable as Jill realizes the Nemesis is relentless and won't stop until it has eliminated her. Jill soon runs into Brad Vickers, who reveals that the creature chasing them is after stars members in Raccoon City. Brad urges Jill to escape while he holds off the approaching zombies. The pair are forced to retreat inside a nearby bar when the zombies break through the barricades. However, even the bar's defenses prove ineffective as the zombies eventually break in. Brad sacrifices himself to buy Jill time to escape, urging her not to make the same mistake he did. She manages to fight off the zombies and vows to rendezvous with a helicopter on top of the parking garage building. She makes her way through a storage room and encounters Dario Rosso, a resident who has locked himself inside a storage container. Jill pleads with him to come with her, but Dario refuses, citing his fear of facing the horrors outside. As he begs Jill to leave him be, she reluctantly heads off, leaving Dario to his fate. The scene is one of desperation and despair, as Jill is faced with the harsh reality that not everyone can be saved in a city overrun by zombies and monsters. Her encounter with Dario highlights the emotional toll of the apocalypse and the difficult decisions she will have to make to survive. As she enters the parking garage, Jill Valentine is aware that danger lurks around every corner. Her heart races as she comes across several zombies, their eyes vacant and their bodies limping aimlessly. She keeps her gun ready, taking cautious steps towards the elevator that would take her to the rooftop where a helicopter awaits her. Suddenly, a deafening explosion shatters the silence, and Jill feels the ground shake beneath her feet. Before she could react, a dark figure emerges from the shadows. It is Nemesis. Jill tries to fire her gun, but it is too late. The chopper blows up in a fiery blaze, and she is thrown back by the shockwave. As she moves into a nearby car, she rams into Nemesis with all her might, sending them both hurtling off the building. As they crash, Jill could visualize her life flashing before her eyes. But somehow, she manages to crawl out of the wreckage before the car explodes, and she witnesses Nemesis' face mask burn away in the flames. She can see her pursuer for what it truly is for the first time. There is no time to linger, for she is aware that she must keep moving if she wants to survive. Just then, Carlos Oliveira, a member of the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service UBCS, appears. He uses an anti-tank rocket launcher to briefly incapacitate Nemesis, giving Jill a chance to catch her breath. At first, Jill is wary of Carlos as Umbrella is responsible for the chaos that is ongoing in Raccoon City, but she quickly realizes that she has no other choice. With Nemesis still on her tail, she decides to go with him. Carlos introduces her to Captain Mikhail Victor, the platoon leader of the UBCS, who asks for her help in evacuating the survivors via the subway train. Jill is hesitant, but she knows that she must help the civilians who are caught up in the outbreak. Reluctantly, she agrees to help, and Carlos hands her a radio to stay in touch. He also gives her a new nickname, Super Cop. Carlos instructs Jill to head for the substation to restore power to the city. As she makes her way toward the main road, he instructs her to go through an alley, but she discovers that it had been set ablaze. Undeterred, Jill traverses the streets and alleys of Raccoon City in search of a fire hose to extinguish the flames. After acquiring the hose and putting out the fire by attaching it to a nearby hydrant, Jill enters the substation and finds an injured Murphy Seeker. Before she could treat him, she is shocked to see Nikolai Zinoviev appear from behind and shoots Murphy in the head. Enraged by the senseless act of violence, Jill angrily confronts Nikolai, who taunts her and suggests that she is too soft to survive in this harsh new world. Ignoring his words, Jill goes on and discovers a nest of cocoon-like structures lying on top of the cables. She is ambushed by a hive of drain dimos, which forcibly impregnate her with an unborn larva. Despite the danger, Jill manages to kill the larva and reset the circuit breakers, restoring power to the substation and the metropolitan area. In the process, she destroys the nest that is responsible for spawning the monstrous creatures infesting the city. Jill's mission seems far from over. However, she is once again tracked down by Nemesis. After narrowly avoiding it, Jill informs Carlos that the creature was still alive. He instructs her to return to the station, but Jill refuses to leave until she has restored traffic control to the city. After navigating the dangerous streets of Raccoon City, Jill managed to reach her destination and plot out a safe route from Redstone Street to Fox Park Station. With this task completed, she heads back to the station, determined to help as many people as she can to escape the city before it becomes too late. As Jill attempts to contact Carlos, she finds that there is no signal, prompting her to head for the surface. She navigates her way through the sewers to get into the city above, but her exploration is cut short as she encounters numerous hunter gammas. These bioweapons have been smuggled into Raccoon City by Umbrella scientist Dr. Logan Carlisle, who had refused to destroy them and instead tries to sell them to Umbrella Europe. However, Jill manages to make it to the top and contacts Carlos eventually. He informs her that they will leave once she makes it back to him. As Jill attempts to reach street level, she realizes that she has been tracked by the relentless Nemesis. The creature grabs her by the head and throws her outside, then proceeds to chase her with its new flamethrower. Jill evades its attack by ascending the building she is in until she ultimately escapes to the rooftop. There, she is forced to duel with it, ultimately destroying its fuel tank and incapacitating it. Believing that she had killed it, Jill calls Carlos and informs him that it is dead. She then paves her way through Kendo's gun shop to reach the station. As Jill enters the station, she is jumped over by a gun-wielding Robert Kendo. Although, relieved to see that he is alright, and suggests he come with her to the station, Kendo refuses, reassuring her that he would be alright, and bids her goodbye. Soon after, Jill is attacked by Nemesis once again, this time wielding a rocket launcher with a laser guiding system. The creature continues to pursue her, and Carlos contacts her, informing her that he knows how to slow it down. Jill leads Nemesis back to the station, where Carlos shoots a gasoline truck that explodes on the BOW. They then move to the station and meet up with the other UBCS members. Mikhail praises Jill for her actions and asks her to get on the train. Meanwhile, the captain orders Carlos and Tyrell to head back into the city and find Dr. Nathaniel Bard, whose vaccine research could save the city. Nikolai, waiting inside the train, praises Jill, saying that she is learning that all that matters is her own life. As they start their escape from the doomed city, Mikhail gets on the train, and they set off. On September 29th at 2:11 a.m., Nikolai and Mikhail have a conversation about the possibility of Dr. Bard still being alive. However, Mikhail suspects Nikolai has ulterior motives and voices his concerns. Nikolai responds with a chuckle before they are interrupted by the sudden appearance of Nemesis. It starts attacking and killing the civilians that had taken shelter inside the train, leaving Jill, Mikhail and Nikolai trapped with it. Jill tries to attack Nemesis, but Mikhail stops her and instructs her to get to the back of the train. Nikolai locks the door, trapping Jill and Mikhail with the assailant. Nemesis ensnares and pierces Mikhail with a tentacle, and in a final act of sacrifice, he uses a C4 detonator to try to destroy the tyrant, separating them from the subway car Jill is in. As a result of the explosion, Jill's car begins to derail, and she flies into the wall of the train, losing consciousness. 23 minutes later, Carlos and Tyrell arrive at the Raccoon City Police Department, where they witness Lieutenant Marvin Branagh getting bitten by a zombified Brad. Marvin runs back into the station, locking the front door. Carlos and Tyrell kill the zombie and enter the RPD to search for Dr. Bard, who is believed to be in the STARS office. They encounter lickers and zombies that have overrun the station but eventually reach the office and contact Bard. Bard reveals that Umbrella is killing all the researchers who might incriminate the company by revealing their illegal activities in connection to the outbreak. He urges Carlos and Tyrell to rescue him from the hospital, which is filled with BOWs and zombies. Before ending the call, Tyrell hacks into the computer to trace Bard's location, while Carlos receives a transmission from Jill, informing him that everyone on the train is dead and that Nikolai left them to die before abruptly ending the call. Carlos rushes to Jill's location while Tyrell tracks Bard at 4:43 a.m. before Carlos arrives. Jill crawls out of the subway car and realizes that she is the only survivor of the train derailment. She tries to contact Carlos but is out of range, eventually reaching the city park near the St. Michael's Clock Tower Plaza. There, she hears Nemesis roaring in pain and crosses a walkway bridge, where she sees the monster tumbling down a riverbank, burning. She then contacts Carlos and informs him of what has happened since he left. During their call, Nemesis emerges from the river, having mutated into a quadrupedal, ferocious canine-like creature with huge claws, and attacks Jill. She fights it for a long time before finally knocking it out with explosive rounds. Before she can leave the area, Nemesis attacks her again, impaling her arm with a bone spike and infecting her. She manages to shoot the chain holding the metal portcullis, which falls and amputates Nemesis's arm. It regrows the arm in the form of a tentacle and manages to attack Jill again, causing her to lose consciousness. As Jill lies on the ground, Nikolai appears, smiling and thanking her for doing him a big favor. After half a day, Carlos finally finds Jill, and without hesitation, carries her to the Spencer Memorial Hospital in the hope that they could cure her. He contacts Tyrell to inform him of their location, and they arrange to meet there. Upon arriving at the hospital, Carlos places Jill on a bed in the makeshift sick room and immediately sets out to find the vaccine. He eventually stumbles upon the office of Dr. Nathaniel Bard, but as he enters, finds Bard dead with a gunshot wound to the head. Carlos is shocked and confused by the situation, but upon searching the office, he finds a computer that contains a video recording. In the video, Bard reveals that the T-virus, a biological weapon engineered by Umbrella, is primarily responsible for the outbreak in Raccoon City. He explains that he has a sample of the vaccine in his office, but the executives on the board want it to be destroyed so no evidence of the virus can be kept in proof. Carlos is stunned by the revelation, but he knows that he must act quickly to save Jill. He obtains the vaccine and rushes back to the makeshift sick room to administer it to her. Thankfully, the vaccine works, and Jill's condition begins to improve. As they prepare to leave the hospital, Tyrell switches on the TV and an announcement reveals stating that the contagion is uncontainable, and the U.S. government would launch a missile strike on October 1st to eradicate the virus and the city along with it. They urge all survivors to evacuate before the deadline. As they move forward suddenly the hospital is surrounded by hordes of zombies. Carlos is aware as he must protect Jill and give Tyrell enough time to hack into the hospital's security to shut the doors down. He goes outside and fights off the zombies to keep them at bay. He uses a C4 detonator to knock down a pillar covering the front entrance, hoping to create a distraction and buy more time. He then returns to the makeshift sick room and instructs Tyrell to contact someone in the government to stall the missile strike while he searches for a cure. Carlos is determined to save Jill and any other survivors who might still be in the city. Upon awakening, Carlos informs Jill that the city is now secure and the danger is past. However, he suddenly coughs up blood and begins to transform into a zombie. He implores Jill to shoot him as it's the only way to stop him, but she finds herself unable to do so. In a tragic turn of events, Carlos, now fully transformed, attacks Jill and consumes her. Jill awakens from a nightmare and notices that her wound has been treated. She looks at the television and realizes that it is October 1st, just a few hours before the missile strike. Tyrell is outside attempting to contact someone with the authority to stop the missile strike. He informs Jill that Carlos is underground trying to acquire enough vaccine to give the city some hope. Jill decides to find him. While exploring, Jill discovers a secret complex that leads her to an underground facility. Inside, she encounters Nikolai, who appears to be keeping watch. Jill chases after Nikolai, but he manages to evade her. She then meets up with Tyrell, who has been able to contact the government and convince them to halt the missile strike in exchange for the delivery of the vaccine. As they are moving forward, they are once again attacked by the mutated Nemesis. The creature manages to overpower Tyrell and impales him with its tentacles. Before he dies, Tyrell urges Jill to continue without him. She manages to escape Nemesis and arrives at the Nest 2 facility, where she synthesizes the vaccine successfully. Unfortunately, Nemesis appears again and ambushes Jill. She manages to escape and reaches the disposal center. Nemesis breaks in but loses its footing and falls. Jill drops the vaccine but manages to cling onto some ledges. Suddenly, Nikolai appears and proposes a deal. He wants Jill to fight Nemesis while he records the battle and obtains battle data that he can sell for profit. In exchange, he will return her vaccine. Jill agrees and heads down to fight Nemesis. During the battle, Carlos appears and aids Jill. They both badly injure Nemesis using their weapons and the crane in the area. Carlos drops the crane for Jill to climb on, but Nemesis attempts to attack her again. Carlos uses the crane to strike Nemesis, causing it to fall. He then floods the center of the area with potent solvents from the tanks, dissolving Nemesis into a bloody pulp in the process. As Carlos drops Jill and promises to meet her up ahead, she pursues Nikolai and aims her gun at him, demanding the vaccine. He refuses to give it to her. Suddenly, Nemesis bursts into the room as a giant blob, and Nikolai reveals that data on Nemesis could be worth millions before running away. Jill decides to deal with Nemesis one last time, while Carlos chases after Nikolai to the roof of the building. Jill opens a compartment and takes out a powerful weapon known as Finger, firing it at Nemesis and injuring it. She then shoves the railgun into Nemesis's mouth and fires one last shot, obliterating the creature. Jill continues her pursuit of Nikolai and finds Carlos knocked unconscious on the roof. Nikolai attacks and knocks Jill's gun out of her hand, but then tosses her the vaccine canister. To her horror, he shoots it, dooming the city. Jill asks him if he knows what he has done, but he simply says he doesn't care, as his client asked him to destroy Umbrella. Nikolai prepares to kill Jill, but Carlos tackles him and they fight. Eventually, Carlos puts Nikolai in a chokehold and tells Jill to shoot him. She hesitates at first, fearing she might hit Carlos, but she finally complies and shoots Nikolai in the shoulder. As Carlos lies injured, he tells Jill he couldn't leave her in a world without him, and she asks an injured Nikolai why he destroyed the vaccine. He responds cryptically, and when she asks who he was working for, he begs her to get him out of there and promises to pay her. Jill decides to leave Nikolai on the roof, but he warns her that if he dies, she will never find out the truth. She replies that she doesn't mind doing some detective work. Together, Jill and Carlos board a helicopter and leave Nikolai behind. As they fly out of the city, they witness a missile fired by the U.S. government, which destroys Raccoon City with a thermobaric bomb. The shockwave disrupts the helicopter's trajectory, and Jill feels empty and cold as the shockwave washes over them. She realizes that all the deaths and tragedies could have been prevented if it weren't for human greed. With a resolve to take down Umbrella for their unlawful actions, Jill decides that the city's ashes would also be Umbrella's ashes. An unknown person, presumably to be Jill, grabs the cracked vaccine container off a desk, making off with it, and the game ends here. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, then please consider liking our video and subscribing to our channel. We will see you in the next one.